Yeah, thank you for this warm welcome. It is an interesting topic. It's an exciting topic, but it's also a frightening topic. If you look at the headline, war, destruction, violence, is really frightening. And if we look around the situation in the world in the moment, so I'm not sure in what direction we go in the moment. If we really go into a more peaceful world, or we're just preparing for the next explosion of destructiveness, and I'm traveling around a lot. So sometimes I'm really thinking about what country can you visit, and where are places they are too dangerous to go. But the same if you stay in Germany, maybe something could happen with terroristic attacks, or violence is so widespread. And so I think it's so urgent, it's so necessary that we learn also on a collective level more about the reasons. Why do we need to act out so much destructiveness? Why is there so less consciousness still how to avoid it, how to step out of these dynamics? So I think it's very necessary, really necessary, to get more clearness about the backgrounds of this destructiveness, and also some ideas how to step out. And I will show you my experiences. They all result from psychotherapy. It's individual psychotherapy. I do not work with bigger groups, but what I've found out in individual work, I think it's useful and could be useful also on a collective level. And I will show it to you, and also I want to discuss it. As if whenever you have any questions, have any ideas, have any comments, please feel free to make it, because I think it's very important that we discuss this issue and become more active in that, and not only suffer passively from all the destructiveness around us. So the subtitle is Fighting with Enemies or Making Peace with Oneself. And the third line is the perpetrator-victim dynamic. This is what I theoretically name it, how I name it. That is on the basis of all this, there is a psychology of the perpetrator-victim dynamic. So my agenda. So the first point, wars and violence, destructions today. You only have to open the newspapers. You only have to have a look at the television programs, and you see it. It's so obvious that it's there. It's not hidden. The fact that we are working in our work with trauma, this is the most obvious trauma. There are more hidden trauma behind, but the most obvious thing is that violence is everywhere. In the societies, in the families, in the relationships. So it's so obvious, but on the other hand, there are a lot of things hidden in it. And this is what I think it's important to make it clearer. I think I structure it, the whole lecture, on the idea of 4 levels. There are 4 levels of conflicts that are based on a mutual dependency. And then I will define what does it mean, victim, when I have this concept of victim, the concept of perpetrator, and the concept of trauma. And then I try to make clear that there's important to distinct between being a victim and being a perpetrator, and on the other hand, victim attitude and perpetrator attitudes. And then if we understand that, if we know what does it mean being a victim, what does it mean having perpetrator attitudes, then it's easier to understand that the perpetrator and the victim can be within one person. It doesn't need to be that to say you are the perpetrator, you are the victim. Then we can realize that as well the victim as the perpetrator is part of myself. And when we understand this and how it shows in the many ways, then we can ask the question, what is helpful now for an exit? How can we step out of it? And first of all, I mentioned those exits that are not helpful but practiced worldwide in many, many ways. And in the end, to say, yeah, what are those ways who are really helpful to step out? And I didn't find so many, it's only a few. Yeah, there's exits that does not work. There are many, many, there are hundreds, but there are only a few of the exit that really works. That's what I found out in the work I'm doing. Okay, let's start with these four main conflicts based on mutual dependencies. There is the one thing, the bigger area is the fighting for territories. We have this on the level of states, that there is always a continuous fighting who owns the earth, who is the owner of the earth, who is the owner of a certain area of earth. And this is a huge source for conflicts. The second level and area is economy. Yeah? It's interesting, yeah, that also in the economy that should support us to have make a good living, that this economy is an economy of conflicts, permanent conflicts. Yeah? We are so used to it, yeah, that it's important to mention why has economy be a sphere of permanent conflicts? Why is this necessary? Is this natural? I don't believe it. Then the third level is conflicts between males and females. Partnerships, yeah, close partnerships, intimate relationships that are very often a sphere where this perpetrator-victim dynamic is acted out. And last not least, the descent between parents and their children. Also the relation between parents and children very, very often is a perpetrator-victim dynamic that is acted out here. So all these fields are connected, they are interconnected, they are not independent from each other. It's important to understand this too, that there is an interconnection between the lowest level, where the child and the parents and the mother, and the highest level, where we do have all these territorial conflicts in Syria, in Ukraine, wherever in the world it is. It's interconnected. And so we can reflect, first have a look at the qualities, what qualities of human relations we can have at all. And we can see there is an option. There's an option between love on the one side and ignorance and rejection on the other side. And there is an option between partnerships on the one side and dominance and submissiveness on the other. The same on the economic level. There is an option for cooperation, and there's also the option for exploitation. And similar, on the global level, there is the option between global responsibility and on the other side, the violence and wars. So, are we willing to act constructively and act out constructivity, or are we, all the time focused? Are we all the time focused on destruction? This is the question. And this destructivity, this is what I then call the consequence of a victim-perpetrator dynamic. Yeah? The victim-perpetrator dynamic is in itself destructive. It's important to know this. So then, to show it like this, we have this victim-perpetrator dynamic. It's independent, and you can describe it, and I will describe it a little bit. But to explain it, to really explain a perpetrator-victim dynamic, it is necessary to include a concept, and this concept for me is trauma. You only understand, and I only understand, these ongoing processes of perpetrator-victim dynamics if we understand more about trauma, and what trauma is and what trauma does with us. So my thesis is as humans, we are traumatizing us in all possible relationships and are creating continuously victims and perpetrators on different levels. We do it. We produce trauma and we go on with it unless we understand it and become more conscious about it, and with the consciousness become more empathy for our existence. So on all these levels we produce trauma. Politics produces trauma, economy produces trauma, partnerships produce trauma, and as well families are producers of trauma. And the question is then, what does it do with us if we are under the influence of trauma? So first of all, to define what this means, victim, or what does it mean to say somebody is a victim. So give you some examples for victims. The victim, you become a victim by a harm that is done to your body and to your psyche. That is a very basic definition. Either by natural forces, can also be a thunderstorm, can also be a flood, can be fire, can be an eruption of a volcano, or by acts of other human beings and also living creatures, of course. There can be other human creatures that can traumatize us. And then looking at the harm can be smaller or bigger. And the biggest psychological damage is created when we are made a victim by those we are extremely dependent on and we do love. It's also important to mention, no? That dependency and also the love relationship with others can do the most psychological harm that is possible. Let's have a look at the perpetrators, how to define perpetrators. On the one thing, you can see a perpetrator is doing harm to another person by theft, violence, murder, lying, betrayal, humiliation, all sorts of things, physical violence, or the same as psychological violence. Or, this is also important to say, by denying others the food, the help, the care, the contact they need. There's one thing you do something, the other thing is that you do not do something that is necessary for others. And the same, being a perpetrator can be done directly, it can be acted out directly, systematically and consciously on the one side, or indirect, unconscious, without intention. I made a very interesting experience some days before in Munich when I was working, and I was in the role of a perpetrator, and I felt that inside myself there was the volcano of emotions and sensations, and I really could explode. And from the outside I had a construction. It was like concrete, iron, whatever. And this was these two sides. In the one side a very hot spot, and the outside being like a column, saying like this. And then I realized, as this perpetrator, I cannot act directly. I cannot do something directly. So I needed to have somebody who is obeying me, who I can give jobs to do. I need people that are dependent on me. Because as this perpetrator, I'm not longer able to do something. I'm blocked. I block myself. So I need others to act out what I want from them. And this gave me an idea how many perpetrators, they need others to perpetrate instead of them. They can't do it for themselves. All those persons in the background, that are perpetrators, that do not go themselves to wars, or do not directly exploit other people, but they sit on their desk and act out because they have enough people around them that obey the rules. So it's very interesting experiences. And of course, they only can act as perpetrators as long as there are others that obey and act out what they want them to do. They can't do it themselves. It's very important. When there's a king, yeah, and the people do not obey the king any longer, the king is helpless. He can't even live on himself. He can't even make a daily life on himself. Yeah? It was a very interesting experience I had. So, yeah, there are those institutions. No? There's institutions in the background that act out, they have their rules, and they act as perpetrators, but they don't do it directly. Yeah? They have those people that obey them, and then they are the perpetrators. They go to war, they go to make policemen, whatever, military forces and so on. Yeah, and the question is, of course the question is then, why are there people that obey? Why are so many people that obey the rules of the perpetrators? And this, of course, needs extra explanation. Yeah, so trauma. What is trauma? If you look at harm, we have generally defined it as harm that can be done. So when is a harm a trauma? It's necessary that, harm as a trauma, to describe it first and then to explain it. Harm as a trauma, this means people are killed, they starve to death, they don't have enough shelter against heat and cold. Their life basis is, their life resources are destroyed, for example, by stealing the land, poisoning the soil, taking away one's income. On the other hand, when men and women denying their identity, this is also a traumatizing harm, and children with lasting psychological and physical damages. So this is just a short description. Yeah? What we all know, it's not a secret. We know that the amount of violence, the amount of exploitation, devastation of land. We know that. We just for example, with the refugees, yeah, the refugees, it's a symptom. It's a symptom of this. That the symptom of war, and the other thing, they are symptoms of no income, no possibility to earn a living, or to produce food, and then they go and search for a safer place, or a place where they can have some food or some shelter. So, if we look at harm as a personal trauma experience, so the question is what is needed. So, the one thing is that by a deed or not being supported by a human being, this ends up for us in a state of helplessness and being overwhelmed by fear, rage and pain. No? This is the basic definition of trauma. If we are confronted with a situation, we can't deal with it, and then we end up in this absolute helplessness, being overwhelmed, and then those feelings that comes up, we can't deal with it. Fear, rage, pain, shame, all those sorts of feelings. We can't do anything against it. Then we go into a stress reaction, but in a trauma, when it comes to trauma, it doesn't help. It doesn't help to run away, it doesn't help to fight. And if we do this, if we try to run away or hide, this can make the damages even bigger. If you resist against the perpetrator, it could be that then you are even more beaten and even more persecuted. And so it is necessary to have these emergency reactions that help you to survive, like solidifying, freezing, dissociating, and splitting. It's the only way. Then you have an option, maybe a small, sometimes only a small option that you can survive. And you have to stay. You still have to stay in relation with the perpetrator. The perpetrator normally doesn't go away, or the field where it happens, it is not, after the trauma is a clear field and you can start from anew. No, the field, you have to live together with the perpetrator. This is the problem. Yeah. You have to split in the one side in order to stay with the perpetrators. So, the definition then, what is the definition of being a victim? The definition of being a victim is a human being has experienced a trauma with intolerable feelings of panic, rage, shame, pain, and disgust. He has survived by denying and splitting, but the trauma stays present. Then, as much as possible, unconsciously. The only thing is, in a way, to bring it out of your consciousness, to bring trauma out of consciousness. So this is a typical situation, for example, when there is sexual abuse. There's sexual trauma, and it continues. And the most important thing for you is that there are no pictures, that you don't have any memories about it. That is what you need in this situation. And our surviving strategies are necessary as long as the trauma is not integrated. That means also as long as we stay in contact with the perpetrators, and as long as when we see them that there's a perpetrator-victim dynamic, as long as we are perpetrators against ourselves. It can happen. It can happen that you come out of the fear of influence of the perpetrator, but then you already have established the inner perpetrator, and then maybe the outer perpetrator is not here, but the inner perpetrator is still working inside us. And what's also important, that is because this is such a awful thing. It's also important to mention that even if there's worst cases, and I really work with people with worst cases scenarios, there is still healthy parts. It's so important to mention that some part of our psyche cannot be destroyed. There stays something that stays healthy. And this gives hope. And I, for example, worked with a client. She was in a satanistic cult and was abused in so many ways, and was, of course, a victim of the mother and the father. But, working with her, looking at her healthy eye, going into contact with the healthy eye, and having a focus now helped her to really step out. And meanwhile, she is in a process where she can say, this is the dark world. It is awful to be in it, and sometimes I'm in it, but I know there is the other world too. And now I know I can. Whenever I'm here in this dark world, I know that there's a healthy eye outside of this dark world. And I can make a contact with this light, this healthy world. It's so helpful. And it's so necessary. It's so necessary to establish it, to know, to re-establish the healthy structures in order then to deal with the dark world of the trauma. And this is the model I'm working with in this field and in all other field of trauma. The splitting that we have the healthy parts that I mentioned before, and then we have here the being a victim, and then the third section, the victim attitudes. To make this distinction, that there's the sector where we are the victim, we really are the victim, and on the other side we have our victim attitudes, and this is what I explain next, the difference between being a victim and victim attitudes. And these victim attitudes are our trauma surviving strategies, and they have many faces. Something like this, you hide behind a mask, for example. That means that you have suppress your emotions. They have suppress your impulses to fight or to run away, because this is dangerous. So in a way, you have to suppress yourself. And this, we have seen it today also in the workshop we have done, what it is, what it means to suppress your feelings. That means your fears, your anger, that you cannot show it. You have to do it for yourself. Yeah? To find a way to suppress yourself and to suppress your very basic emotions. Yeah, and then to submit, yeah, to say, to acknowledge that you are stronger than me, and I can't, and I will obey your rules and whatever we have to do then. And another thing is a surviving strategy. I learned from the years of work now that we are always denying being a victim. It's so hard to really accept and to say, yes, I'm a victim. Because it raises up so many fears. It raises up so many shame, also a lot of shame, that the last thing we want to admit is to say to others and all on the public, I am a victim. Maybe it's better to say I was made a victim, because it's not my identity that I am a victim. I was made a victim. Yeah? But the reality is that I was made a victim. Yeah? And no longer denying that is a huge step. It's a huge step forward. Yeah? It's a huge step forward, admitting my identity. Yeah, and so there's also an attitude that you can find in every victim. They want to be strong. They want to be strong, not crying, not complaining, not feeling desires, just to, yeah. For example, I'm so strong that I do not need to cry. I'm so strong that I do not show my pain. I'm so strong that I can hide everything inside me. This was a very, very strong survival strategy is. And so it ends up sometimes in the disgust of your own weakness. If you want something, if you are sad, oh yes, I hate being sad. I don't want to be sad, and yeah. So this, then you fight against this weakness. And another surviving strategy, another victim attitudes, that victims try to suppress the memories of the trauma. They do not want to be remembered. They do not want to know what happened in the childhood. They just want to go on, but forward. They don't want to look back. Yeah, this is a normal attitude of many of those who have a bad childhood. They want to look back. Yeah, just no, don't touch it. Yeah, let it as it be. There is the idea that that is over. The childhood or whatever I experience is over. Don't look back, look forward. And this, of course, is supported in many ways also in society. Not to look back, not to be so, going back to memories of childhood. Why should we do it? For where was it is good for? So this is a very widespread surviving strategy. And in the end, also the victims feel guilty. Even they are not really the reason for being traumatized, but they instead feel guilty. We will see, the perpetrator doesn't feel guilty. Instead, the victim feels guilty. And sometimes they feel also, if you, for example, myself, I was beaten as a child very often, very hard, and if you grow up, then looking back, say, oh yeah, it was not so heavy, it was not so serious, and maybe you have done something wrong, and then to justify them. Most of those who were beaten as children, and they justify it when they are grown up. They justify it as something that was important to give them strength and to make them stronger for life. You need to be stronger for life. There's a lot of victim attitudes, and one is complaining helps, for example. That means that many people are they lamenting, they're suffering, they're complaining about politics, they're complaining about economy, they're complaining about the partner. Of course you can do it, yeah. But the most important thing is then you have to find out what is the reasons. Yeah? But complaining without reasons is a victim attitude. And then you are in a constant fear of something could happen again, and so. But you never go deeper. To just stay on this level. You stay on this level, and this is it's a way of living. You can say somebody. For some people, it's just a way of living, to complaining and to feel fearful, and something can happen, but they don't want to really to go back and look at the real reasons of it. Yeah, we have this submissiveness, this passivity, resignation, wanting to be dead. This is the end. Huh? In the end, if you cannot find any hope, or don't have a hope that something improves, then the end, okay, then I could die as well as an option. Yeah, and what is specifically important in this victim attitudes is how victims see the perpetrators. This is, in a way, it's the secret of all. The secret of all, how the victim sees the perpetrator. And the victims do not see the perpetrators as perpetrators. They don't dare to mention it. They don't dare to say, oh, you have done harm to me, you have traumatized me, so you are a perpetrator. Instead, the victim, if there is a closer relationship to, they emotionally cling to the perpetrators. And that means that they are protecting the perpetrators. They are identifying with the need of the perpetrators. What do you know? What do you need? What does my mother need? What does my father need? What does my employer needs? What does our state need? What can I give? What can I offer? Yeah, and now this results in destructive behavior, and the fact that you can not do something against the perpetrator, the real perpetrators, it ends up that you are a perpetrator against innocent others. Yeah? Where they can do anything against you, then you put out your aggression, like you young people. If they are they're helpless, they are from the families, they are not capable to deal with the situation, they go out in the street and they kick somebody they find, whenever they find it. And the weaker this person is, for example, he's unemployed or whatever, the more they are hating him then. Instead of doing something against the real perpetrators, they kick and sometimes kill innocent others. And then there is a fantasizing common we with the perpetrators. If you understand this perpetrator-victim dynamics more, then you become very cautious to say we. So whenever you say we as Norwegians, we as Germans, we as... So the question is this real a we? Is there really some common interests? Yeah? Or is it a we that where you build a bridge between victims and perpetrators instead of naming who is who? So this we is a very tricky thing, and it's I did a work some days before with a client, and she had a me, and in her sentence, and then I said, okay, I step in the role of the me, but I was always experience is so quickly that it changed to we, me, we, and I could not stay with me because I always we, my mother, my father, my family, my brother. And so this is, of course, something that has to develop, this ability to say me and to know when it is okay to say we. But of course we need we. Of course we need communities. Of course we need relationships. Of course, we need institutions, yeah? But the question is this really a we? Yeah? Is this really a we? Or is it just a fantasy of a we? And so there are also strategies of victims that, what I found out, that the victims feel morally above the perpetrators. Yeah? Even if they can't do anything against the perpetrators, but they feel higher. I feel above you, yeah? And I feel pity for you that you are a perpetrator, yeah? For example. And they are seeking for harmony and ideas of peacefulness and saving the world. These all are these higher fears of these victim attitudes. Well, yeah, this is one I left. The victim attitudes as a surviving strategy on a collective level. So there are a lot. One, for example, is clinging to traditions, or over-ovulation for religion, and also this terrorism as a sacrifice is a collective surviving strategy. Well, before I continue with the perpetrator side, is there any questions you have or any comments you have about the victim, being made a victim, and victim attitudes? Please, Maria.
Why do you call it now victim attitude and before you call it survival strategies? Because I felt that survival strategies is more general and includes both victim and perpetrator attitudes.
Yeah, I specifically for this trauma of violence, the surviving strategies in general for every trauma, the different types of trauma, you can have different surviving strategies, and specifically here I call it perpetrator attitudes and victim attitudes. It's because of the trauma, the type of trauma. But in general, of course, these are all our surviving strategies. Is it clear or?
Not really.
Not really. Then again, please.
It's just, why do you call it now victim attitudes and not survival strategies in general like before?
Yeah, to make this, for me, in my development of my theory, it was a step to see when somebody is complaining, for example, is he now in a state where we can work with him and say, okay, you have suffered a lot, let's have a look, or is it a surviving strategy? For me, it was important to get it clearer. It's the same if we work and there is a sentence written down on the screen, to think about it, is this because the person wants to come into contact with being made a victim, or is this a victim attitude? As if, even if it sounds, I want to come into contact with my victim parts, but in a way, in itself, it's a victim attitude. It was for me very important to make this distinction between being the victim and the victim attitudes as surviving strategy. This is the reason why, how it comes that I make this distinction. Okay. Yeah, any other questions you have or comments? So if not, then I continue with the next slide, the perpetrator. What does it mean being a perpetrator? And what does it mean especially being a perpetrator that is traumatizing others? Yeah? And I made a conclusion that the perpetrator, the person that is traumatizing another person, in fact is traumatizing himself too. Yeah? That means being a person that does so much harm to another person that you traumatize this person, on the other hand, traumatizes himself or herself. That was also a step in the development of this thinking, to understand that the perpetrator is not the bad person only, but is also a person that is, by doing this, traumatizing himself. And why is this the case? Because of this. because it's not accepted. It's ethically, socially, it's not accepted that we traumatize others. Everyone, if you ask people on the street, and if you ask them, is it acceptable that to traumatize another person, your child, your partner, your competitor, is it okay? Most of the people would say, no, it's not okay. Yeah, you shouldn't do that. Yeah? And we know that. We know that we should not do that. And this is, of course, that we fear that we are blamed for traumatizing others. It's socially not acceptable. Because the consequences are bad consciousness. You can't sleep if you know that what you have done. There are massive feelings of guilt. There are massive feelings of shame. And there are a fear of being socially despised and excluded. We know that if we do harm to others. So, if we are perpetrators, in what way ever, we have to find some trauma surviving strategies then. It's also necessary. No perpetrator can exist without trauma surviving strategies, without the perpetrator attitudes, what I call them perpetrator attitudes. And there are many. There are also many. One attitude is here, yeah? To hide your face. You hide your face, yeah? Perpetrators do not want to be seen as perpetrators. They do not want that somebody looks in their eyes and sees their face. And you want to see yourself what you have done to others. And then you start, in a process is starting that to deny what the deeds, in fact, even it's obvious. We had this case in Cologne where a man took a knife and hurt this candidate for a major in Cologne with a knife, yeah. And in the court, during the court case, he denied. He just denied. And I believe him. I believe him that his memory doesn't allow him to exactly remember what really happened. Yeah? It needs to be wiped out and washed out. Even it is obvious, when we are perpetrators, we start to wash it out, yeah? To let not to consolidate it in our memory, and so hopefully after a time, it is as if this was a nightmare. It was only a dream. It doesn't really happen. What you have done. Yeah, and though you're working hard not to feel guilty as a perpetrator. You have to work hard not to feel guilty. And instead of building up an attitude of, I'm the right person, I'm do everything correct, whatever I do is justified. And the same, you have to suppress your anxieties, that somebody could see it, what you have done. This picture says a lot about strategies that you are going to demonstrate a good conscience in social situation in the public. That is like you need it, you need to do it. Yeah? If you are a perpetrator, the same way you have an urge to go into the public and say, oh, I have done very good things for all of us. Yeah? It's really necessary. You can't do it without. And you're claiming to do good for everyone, hiding behind, we have this discussion, for example, today in Germany, there is the export of weapons had reached a maximum last year. Yeah? And now we have this discussion. Yeah? Is it necessary to export weapons into the world? Yeah? And there comes this, it has to do. We have to do it because of what? The working places, because of the influence, because of that. Yeah. To find, even for those things that you know they are not acceptable, to find explanations. Yeah? That explanations that do not have to do anything with yourself. They have to be done You need one. It's no way others you can do it. You have to do it. Yeah. That was what it means. Hide behind material compulsions. And yeah, when this all happens, then you come, luckily, as a perpetrator, you come to the conclusion that you are the victim. That is what it's all about. That you can work on it as long as you can say to others, if you blame me, if you say anything against me, then you make me a victim. Then I am the real victim. Yeah, and then it turns around, and then around, and then you can again go against the victims. You can go blaming the others as victims, despising, insulting them, treating them as objects. Oh, it's very quickly. Yeah. So we know this from soldiers. No, they have to go through this process. Yeah, not to feel guilty, to feel righteous. I do right things. It has to be done. When I'm not doing it, and others will do it. And then, if you reach this point, then you're free to deal with others as the victims, yeah, and others as victims, making them an object and treating them respectively. And then this goes on. If this freedom is there for the perpetrators, if you have this step of freedom inside yourself, then you can continue. Then you can continue to fight. Then you have a reason to fight, because you have to fight against enemies. Yeah? You are not the enemy. You are not the perpetrator. The others are the perpetrators. Then you have to get control over others. You have to need weapons. You need power to control others. And then you need ideologies. You need to create pictures of enemies. You need to split social communities, and in the end to justify violence. It's very interesting. You start with, I have done something wrong, I shouldn't do this, and end up with violence is justified. It's necessary. We can't live without it. It's a very interesting development here. And when you have this reach this point, then you can act out violence without any sense, and feeling this triumph and pride when acting out violence and being destructive. But it takes time. It takes time to come to this point. It takes time from childhood, maybe until being a teenager or being 20 years old, or then you go to the ISIS and have this inner attitude, have these attitudes, develop these attitudes. Pictures of enemies, no? Pictures of enemy. What is the picture of enemy today? The most widespread picture of enemy?
The Russians.
The Russian?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Americans, of course.
ISIS, terrorism. Yeah? Terrorism is the most widespread picture of enemies today, nowadays. Yeah? It's used by the Russians the same as by the Americans. Yeah? They use it all over the world. Yeah? It was in the 1980s when they started with that the enemy is the terrorist. Yeah? And if you define the enemy as a terrorist, then everybody can be a terrorist. Yeah? For example, in Turkey, some of the professors at university subscribed a text where they said, they shouldn't treat normal population all like as terrorists. The consequence was that they were accused as being supporters of terrorists, and supporters of terrorists are terrorists themselves. So it's very easily to put the finger on someone and say, you're a terrorist. It's so easy to do it. You just have to say something against the power, and then you are a terrorist. It's so easy. It was more difficult in former times to say the Russians are the enemies because of they suppressing the freedom and oppressing the people and exploiting the people, and so it was more complicated. It's easy. Nowadays it's very easy to make a war against terror. Everyone can do it. Everyone who has weapons can do it. Okay. Yeah, there are. Yeah, then ask your question. Is there something you want to ask or say to this point, that being a perpetrator and these perpetrator attitudes? Yes, please.
One of your first slides where the perpetrator is kind of excusing his or herself.
The perpetrator is kind of excusing it.
Excusing themselves.
Yes.
I would say that they say to themselves that this is acceptable as long as nobody finds out.
Yes.
Because it's being found out that it's the bad thing to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a low level of perpetrator attitudes, yeah. But the higher level is that you say, okay, whoever is saying anything against my violence is violent. So this is the higher level of you can reach. Yeah? If you're in the small level, you have always have to be cautious that nobody knows. But this, yeah. This is the small perpetrators. These are the small perpetrators. They're still afraid of being detected.
Yeah, but they can still do a lot of harm.
Pardon?
They can still do a lot of harm, even though they're at a very low level
Uh-huh.
at predator-victim attitudes.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Give an example. It's
for
easier.
example, a father abusing the children of the family,
Uh-huh.
being afraid that society, the mother,
Uh-huh.
would find out.
Yeah.
He's at the low level,
Yes.
still doing a lot of harm. But as you say here, it's when you're America saying that we can do whatever we want, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Then you're at the high level,
Yeah.
doing a lot of harm, but still on a low level, you can do a lot of harm.
In this area you control.
Yeah.
Yeah. For example, is this the family?
Yeah.
You can control the family. Yeah. 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 And yeah, small perpetrator can only control small areas. Yeah. The bigger perpetrators, they control the whole world, and or try to control the whole world. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Please.
I just think the word like small perpetrator makes the victim also feel small in a way. So you can just get twisted in the brain when you say small perpetrator, like
Uh-huh.
the crime isn't so big.
No. The scale of the attitudes, the surviving strategy of the perpetrators. Yeah, there's a scale. Yeah, a low scale and a high scale. Huh? The one that still is afraid that somebody could see what I'm doing, and those who are doing it obviously, and they feel right in doing that. There's a difference. That's just the difference. So the harm for those who are in the family abused, this is trauma. It's trauma, and there is, yeah. It's nothing to be. It's nothing to say there is no harm, or it's a small harm only. That's one. Being sexually abused in a family is one of the biggest trauma that can happen to you, and it's so hard to step out of this trauma experiences when you suffer from it. It takes a long time to come over it. Yes, please.
So to understand you correctly, you're saying that the scale from to the small perpetrator to the bigger one.
No, the attitudes.
The attitudes is like something that you can start from the smaller level and then develop into the bigger one.
Yeah, it's a dynamic.
Yeah.
It's a dynamic in it. Yeah, it's a dynamic in it, and it's part of this perpetrator-victim dynamic. Yeah, if somebody challenges you, yeah, for example, if nobody knows, you stay on this low level, but if somebody is coming and challenging you, and maybe the father is accused of being an abuser, yeah, then it starts. Then it starts. This process starts. How can I turn it around? How can I twist it around and end up and say, oh, my daughter is the perpetrator because she accuses me and I'm not guilty at all. And she's mad and we should take her in the hospital and so. And this is escalating. It's an escalating thing. This dynamics. That's what I learned. Whenever you challenge a perpetrator directly, it escalates.
So does that mean that you can't really actually stop that person?
What?
So you can't actually stop that person somehow?
A lot of cases not, no? You can't. You can't directly stop this person by saying you're a perpetrator. Doesn't work.
So it's better not to say it then?
I don't know, it's better not to say it. It's the question how to address a perpetrator, yeah? And maybe you can, if you are in contact, you just can understand and can say, okay, this is, it's how it is, yeah? You have to excuse yourself. Yeah? It's normal, yeah? To have some, in a way, have some understanding of the process that's going on. Not to put more oil in the fire. But if the moment you start with the perpetrator to fight, he will fight back. And so the question is why you fight. What do you want to get? Yeah.
Yes, I see what you're talking about. And you have on the international level, you have something others also. And you have the power, power behind the power, you know. And these people, they will try to hide what they're doing, who they are, and so on. So this is how I have understood it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is behind the governments and people controlling behind this again.
Mm. Yeah, there are very big person, a rich person behind those who are in power and political power, and yeah, they finance them, yeah, and are not so in the
Try to hide.
Try to hide, yeah.
And successfully.
Yeah. So what I learned that a lot of money that Hillary Clinton is spending for her election campaign comes from the Saudi Arabian states. I only recently heard about that.
Just regarding like challenging perpetrators, I also think what you said earlier about the perpetrator being a victim also and being traumatized in itself is like a key to understanding how you would have to like treat that person, because like in the source of this whole thing is the fact that that person is a traumatized person and needs any kind of help that we could give.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the complicated thing. Yeah, but in fact, no one will become such a high-level perpetrator who wasn't before a victim. Yeah, that is. Meanwhile, we know that it's not a secret any longer. Yeah, we know that those who have gained political power and influence, in many cases, they have a very awful childhood.
I just want to pick up on that because, as far as I have understood, it's exactly because we're not aware of it and we don't understand these dynamics. Because if I understood it correctly, we are all victims and perpetrators in our daily lives, and it's also like our fear and also the way we as societies look at perpetrators, because nobody wants to be a perpetrator, and hence we fear being perpetrators, and we also fear. We judge others for being it. And therefore it's also more difficult to kind of address perpetrators because we do not have enough empathy for them. We look, as you say, it's very complex, but it makes it very,
It's really, of course, the same as we do not want to say I was made a victim. We do not want to admit that we are perpetrators. We want not in the in public to say, oh yeah, what did I do to my children, for example? And this is a very interesting process I can observe in my practice, that those who are mothers and fathers who worked on themselves and worked on their childhood experiences, when the point comes when they realize, oh my God, what have I done with my children? What have I done? How much I was a perpetrator against my children. And they feel a lot of shame, but it's so important that they do it, and they say it and speak it out and admit it, and also admit it in the public, in groups, and say, oh yeah, it's true. I don't no longer have to deny it. This is also a part of this development, that we admit on the one side that we are victims, they want made victims, and the other side to admit to be a perpetrator. And looking back, now I also can see as a therapist how often I was the perpetrator. Thinking I'm doing good things and I'm helping the people, and not seeing how much being sometimes in how to treat others, how much you are a perpetrator. Not knowing. And the more I came into contact with my own victim parts, the less I do need to act out perpetrator attitudes in my work. That was for me very important to understand how easily it can be that you as a therapist can also be a perpetrator against the clients. Okay, so accomplices, this is also interesting to name it, to say it, but there are perpetrators, there are always accomplices, and they look away, they minimize what happens, they are glad not being the victims themselves, they accept privileges they get from the perpetrators, and that they identify with surviving strategies of the perpetrators. You find it in all levels of the society. You find it in the families. When something happened, maybe you have suffered from abuse. Maybe your sister is still justifying the parents and say, "No, you destroy the family if you bring it up," and solidarization with the perpetrators. Or to find it in the level of the journalism, you find it in the level of science, the professors that justify the economy, how it is, or justify political system, how they are. You find it in every level. Those who are lucky that they are not themselves so much the victim, and they accept privileges that they are offered by the perpetrators. Yeah. What's important, I think, for the whole thing is that we see that even the winners in all of those levels, they lose. Even the winner is losing under these conditions. That means winning a war means traumatized soldiers and civil populations and masses of refugees. So the question always is, what do you win when you win a war? Or winning the economic competition means exhausted and ill human beings, masses of homeless paupers. What do you win when you win the economic competition? And same in partnerships. If you traumatize your partner, then this partner is made unable for a good relationship and parenthood. And same, if you traumatize your children, then they will stay all their life dependent on you. And you never get rid of them, in a way. So the winners in all these destructive dynamics are not able to enjoy that success, and they need to find the next enemy in war. Like we know it from this Dagobert Duck. He has so much money, but always is afraid somebody's coming to steal this money from him. Okay. So the victim-perpetrator-splitting is the next step to understand that the same can be in one person. The victim and the perpetrator can be in one person. So the victim-perpetrator-splitting comes like this. If you split off the feelings of being made a victim, this makes you blind for the reality of traumatizing damages. If you don't see the damage in yourself, you don't see the damage around yourself. When there is trauma around you, you don't see it. If you don't have any clue about your own trauma, how could you see the trauma in others? So there's a huge trauma blindness in societies. Huge trauma, because it's so difficult to see yourself as being traumatized. And though the numbness in relation to ourselves becomes numbness against others, and victims become perpetrators which do not realize being made a victim and being a perpetrator. That was what we were discussing before. Before you become a perpetrator, you have been made a victim, but you don't feel it, you don't admit it, you are not supported to understand it, nobody helps you, and then you become numb, and out of this numbness, you become a perpetrator. And this has consequences. The consequence then is that there's a pendulum. We always can be on one side being in our victim attitudes, and the other side turn into perpetrator attitudes. In the morning can be different from the evening. It can change the whole day. And there is on the one side the powerlessness. You feel depressed, helpless. On the other side, you feel grandiosity. This grandiosity. Yeah? You feel superior. So feel that you know everything, and if you would have enough power, you find a solution for everything. Yes, this narcissistic grandiosity there. Yeah, and taking revenge against innocent others. We have talked about this already, and atoning without being guilty. Yeah, this can also happen. Yeah, you have not done anything wrong, but you feel guilty. And you think you need to make something good now to help others or support those who are suffering. There is no reason in it. There is no clear aim in it. Yeah, you act very, so you can't predict in a way what you do. Today you do this, and the next day you do something else. There is no clear line in what you're following. Yeah, and though aggression and depression are normality in everyday life and in relations, religious, national and ethnic illusions of being community serve as a fragile concept for groups. What I said before about the we. Yeah? We need this we, or you cannot distinguish me and we so clearly. Yeah? It's same. For us it's the same. And we want to be together with others, and so we need some concepts. It doesn't come from inside, it doesn't come from our feelings, it comes from concepts, religious concepts, national concepts, ethnic concepts. Yeah, we are Russians, we are individual. So it doesn't come from inside, because you cannot, if you are in this perpetrator victim, you cannot feel from inside. It's not possible. You use your feelings to see what is a good we, what is a good community, with whom I should share something. Yeah? You can't feel it. So you act out of your ideas and concepts. And this means also a loss of intelligence, in the end. You lose your rationality. You can't explain what you're doing. You make ideologies, but you really explain why you're doing this or that. You can't do it. And those you have a lot of contradictions in your feelings, thoughts, and behaviors, and you do not recognize it. You do not see how much contradictions things, your thoughts you have or feelings you have. It's in a way you can say this is an inner chaos. You're in an inner chaos. No orientation, no reference point where you can say this is right or this is wrong. And that means also that you can be very easily manipulated. If somebody gives you an information, oh, you turn to this side, and then another person comes, gives you another information to turn to the other side. Yeah? Like it happens, for example, now in the Brexit discussion in England. No? It was so clearly seen that people do not know what they want and what's all about. Yeah? There comes one person say this, oh yeah, I'm for Brexit, and then another, no, we should stay in the European community. Yeah? It's so easily. And after the Brexit, the election, yeah, the people, oh, what did I do? I did the wrong voting, and I should have. So this is an example for that those people are not clear in themselves. They do not have a clear point of reference, and they are caught up in perpetrator-victim dynamics internally. Yeah. So on the personal level, you have if it's really serious, it becomes serious, you have then things like what in psychiatry is called and diagnosed as personality disorder, psychosis, schizophrenia, delusions, it's suicidality, self-destruction. No? So whenever you work with people who have this diagnosis, if maybe they come to you and they were in the psychiatric hospitals and so, and they have this diagnosis, focus on this, that they are involved in a perpetrator-victim dynamic. You can be sure they are in it. It's my experience with all those who have this, for example, diagnosis schizophrenia or psychosis. They are in a perpetrator-victim dynamic. This is the reason behind. And the same with those who are have chronic diseases, cancer, autoimmune diseases. Behind there is a perpetrator-victim dynamic. As far as I have seen it, with cases of cancer, for example.
Can you come with an example of schizophrenia, for example?
Schizophrenia is, for example, they're talking and talking and talking, endlessly, and one story and the other story and the next story, and stories, about being persecuted or doing something wrong, and so this is this ongoing thinking about what's wrong, and how they can escape from it. Have you ever worked with somebody who's a schizophrenic?
Well, I haven't worked with them, but I have them as clients. I bring people back to work which have diagnosis. So I don't go into any treatment, but still I work with them. So I can't go into it. I'm still interested in like what is there any common dynamics they have in their background?
Yeah, they have trauma they have a lot of trauma in the background. Many traumas, and they love their parents. They want to rescue their parents. They want to rescue the whole family, and they extend this to rescue the whole world. This is.
And also this with the why there are so many religious aspects to.
Because religion seems to be you can save something. You save the world. You're Jesus that can bring peace and harmony to the people, and for example, they're seeking for a solution. They're seeking for a solution for the whole system, and avoiding to look at themselves, what has been done to themselves and what they are doing themselves. And also this antisocial criminal behavior is also a consequence of this both being the victim on one side and being then the perpetrator on the other side. Living as a psychopath in politics, economy, partnerships and families. It's interesting that meanwhile this is acknowledged, that the public knows that. There are articles in newspapers, how many people are on high rank positions, and they are psychopaths. But it is, in a way, it's seen as normal. Knowing that Donald Trump is now going to be the president, it's discussed, okay, he can do it. It can do it. Let's wait how it comes, what comes. It's very interesting how the normality of trauma, we live in it, that there's so many people say, interesting. Maybe he can save us. Maybe he can bring a solution. So on the collective level, we have a lot of consequences of that. War, violence, terror, racism, exploitation, poverty, discrimination, mobbing, and justifying then violence in partnerships and families, and socially accepted and institutionalized negligence of needs of children, including beating and sexual abuse. These are all consequences of the perpetrator-victim dynamics in societies.
Can you translate to us that, Joe?
You're interested in a joke, yeah. You see, there is a, let's say, a white family, normal white family with children and a mother with a little nice boy. Yeah. On the other hand, we have, let's say, an African woman with his boy, with her boy, and so, and she says, "Oh, so little these these blacks are, these blacks are, but in 10 years I didn't want to meet them in the dark. Nowadays they seem so innocent and small, but in 10 years." And the contrast with her own child. This is an example for racism. He knows what to do for the mother. He acts it out for his mother too. Okay. Yeah, the transgenerational consequences of the trauma, perpetrator-victim trauma, is also important to mention, because it's like a hurricane. Yeah, it's like a hurricane. The perpetrator-victim spiral turns and turns and sucks in more and more human beings. Yeah. It doesn't end on itself. It's important to understand this. If this dynamics starts, it grows and it's hungry. This dynamic is hungry. It needs others to be sucked in. And the spiral continues over generation. Whoever is born into a victim-perpetrator system is forced to become a victim or a perpetrator. Yeah. That is the very sad thing. Yeah. Children that are born into such families that acting out perpetrator-victim dynamics, they do not have a chance. You're in, and you have to deal with it. You have to survive it. Only later, if you step out of, have the opportunity to step out, then you can change something. But as long as you're in, they suck you in. They don't let you give. They don't give you peace. Yeah? If you're in this system, or in a bigger system, you are not let alone, because the perpetrator needs you to play the game with them, or the victim needs to play this victim game with them. And so there are imperatives of the victim-perpetrator splittings that are like this. The perpetrators are the saviors. That is strongly believed in these systems. The sacrifice brings us the rescue, and trauma is normal. This is the logic of the perpetrator-victim systems. Yeah, and I forgot it. Self-denying is also normal. Giving up yourself, giving up your interest, looking for yourself, that is normal. How can you do it otherwise? Okay, before I go and continue the next step, are there any comments to this dynamic? For me, it's important. It's a huge thing, yeah. But to make it clear that this is an ongoing dynamics unless we step out of it. Yeah. It doesn't end from itself. It's a need to spread out like a cancer spreads out. Okay, then on the political level, we want strong, successful and merciless leader on the top of this country. We like to work for successful companies that regardlessly push through their interest against others, and we stay in partnerships that are dominated by aggression and anxieties, and we cling to parents that are neither capable to love us or to see us. And this is the consequence on the 4 different levels if we are in such a dynamic. Yeah, so the question is how to step out of it. Yeah? But before I tell it, I say how it does not work. There's some ideas I found how it does not work. Revenge. Revenge does not work. Yeah? To destroy and to kill heats up the dynamics and creates even more victims and perpetrators. With the war against terror, nobody can win the war against terror. Yeah? With every person you kill, you produce another person that you can then see as a terrorist. We see it clearly now. The war against terror cannot end. And if this, the more and more of the politicians also see it, but they don't know how to end it. They still are caught up in this idea to fight against terror. To give up the whole concept would be a huge step forward.
Still they call it defense.
Yes, of course. Yeah, defense. War. We have to defend against terrorism. Then rebellion also doesn't work, because the rebel against the perpetrators is in a useless fight for the love and the acknowledgement from the perpetrators. And this leads to self-destruction. Those who are rebel against the parents, in the end, want to have they want to be loved by the parents. Oh. Okay, it's an older version. And I would like to say it. What's in my updated version is revolution. It is, for me, it's really something to admit for myself, because before I understood this dynamics, I was really thinking revolution is the solution. Yeah. Of course, I was grown up in the after post-war generation, and we thought that revolution would heal the problem. Yeah, but it doesn't, of course, because you can see in all the revolution that has taken place in the last centuries, when those who were the powerless come into power, they act as perpetrators, make others victims. It's so clear in the Russian Revolution and in the Maoistic revolution, or in the revolution in South America. Yeah? It always turned out, or even Africa, it always turned out that those who were before powerless come into power, and they become the perpetrators and make others victims. Yes, then forgiving I've written here. Forgiving is also not an exit from the problem. The forgiving means to try to take away the guilt and the shame from the perpetrators, and is a deflection from own pain and fears. Yeah? You look at the others, want to excuse them, to make it easier for them, and at the same time not looking at yourself. Reconciling, this is an ideal of harmony to avoid the reality of traumatization and to keep on going with love illusions toward the perpetrators. That we find very often in psychotherapy, that the psychotherapist advise you to say, okay, you have to reconcile with your parents and this will help. And there's one example from friends I know. She has autoimmune disease, and her husband talked with me and said, I thought now the mother for the first time said to my spouse, I'm proud of you. And I hope that this would help her to heal, but the autoimmune disease got even worse. Yeah, and I said, okay, of course. That's it. Why? Yeah, this is the illusion that one day I get the love, or as long as you hope this, you stay in this dynamics and you do not step out of it. Yeah, and we have other things like to pathologize and pathologize being the victims and perpetrators does not help. If we bring them to psychiatry, it doesn't help. It doesn't help the society to really progress and understand what's going on. No? You just pathologize, giving them medication, and that's it. That's how nowadays our society is still reacting on seeing somebody who's a victim. Okay, he's depressed, give him medication. Seeing somebody who is a murderer, he's a psychopath, or he's mentally ill, he's schizophrenic or psychotic, and bring him into a psychiatric ward. It doesn't change anything to see it like this. And also this spirituality, arts, religion, sports, it doesn't really help. Yeah, it's surviving strategies. These are surviving strategies that that you can't overcome a perpetrator-victim dynamic that is inside you. For example, in arts, yeah, those who want to be seen, who want to be now being in front of a big audience. Yeah, now I get some acknowledgement. I get the love I was lacking from my parents. It doesn't heal your trauma of love. It doesn't heal your trauma of identity. Yeah, and the same with this helping attitudes, wanting to save the world, and so on. Why doesn't that work? All these things that don't work, because the victim-perpetrator dynamic will not be overcome on the personal level. You do not work on your trauma by this. There is no insight about the perpetrator-victim dynamic on the collective level. You do not really learn as a community what's going on. And so the patterns of and structures of the victim-perpetrator dynamics are not understood and cannot be stopped consciously. And so they will be reacted again and again. And when the one war is over, the next is already under preparation. Yeah. So this is what I want to make clear here, to make more consciousness about the perpetrator-victim dynamics, how it is, how it works, and then and only then we have an option to step out. Okay, and then the question is how to step out. We have to look at both sides. The one side being made a victim and the other side being a perpetrator. And how to find the exit out of being made a victim. Yeah, it's acknowledge it. We have to acknowledge it. We have to speak it out. We don't have to disguise this, to hide it any longer. To really admit it. When it was like this, then it was like this. And this is the basis then to understand your victim attitudes. Then you understand why you act like this. Get more clearness about your own victim attitudes. And then you can accept the damage and then come into contact with all those sensations and feelings that you have split off, that you have to suppress. That's the only way to come out of a victim state. And that means focus on yourself, focus on your needs, what you need. Turn away the focus from the perpetrators. Don't try to understand any longer why is my mother like this, why did my father like this, why do this politician act like this, and so on. Focus on yourself, what you are, who you are, what you need. This is the only way to step out. And it means keep on developing your own identity. And yeah, that's also important. See that there is something like identity. Because as long as we are in this perpetrator-victim dynamics, we do not have an identity. We do not make use of our identity. Yeah? We see us through the eyes of others. Yeah? And we think we are how the others are seeing us. Yeah? And so, stepping out means to understand there is something like identity. There's something like an I. That you now can, maybe for first time in your life, you really want to come into contact with yourself. You see, I do have an I. I do have my needs, my feelings, my own want. And this I want now to understand more. I want to even enjoy it. Yeah. That I'm there. I do have an identity. Yeah. The perpetrator-victim dynamics means also not having an identity. Yeah? Those who are fighting and struggling, and they all fight against identity. Huh? And so they turn this around. They say, no, I do have an identity, and I want to have this identity as much as possible, as much as I can. Yeah, is there before I continue with the perpetrator thing, is there any comments to that? Do we have a better solution? Or how to step out?
Only that it's hard work.
Huh?
Only that it's hard work.
Yes,
Step out.
yes, on the one side, but imagine how hard work it is to stay in. How much energy it costs you, how much financial costs you have to stay in these dynamics, without any good outcome.
Yes, but I see often that when people also do this work, they have to look inside, and often I meet a lot of pain and especially fear and so on. And most people think that, then well, I say many people they turn back, they don't want to see this, they don't want to feel this.
Yeah, of course.
But in my experience, when I am taking care of myself when I'm in this can also be a good experience, actually.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, the question is, in the end, the question is, do you want to live your own life or the life of others? Oh, this is the question. Because as long as we are in this perpetrator-victim dynamics, we do not live our own life. We live the life for others. It's not our own life. And so to start with that, even it's not easy, even it takes time, and you have to be patient with yourself, and of course there are all these processes where you feel anxieties, you feel shame, and it's normal on the way, but then you are on the right direction. If you go towards your own I, you have an orientation and to know this is the right direction. If you don't have it, you go left, go right, go backward, forward, and you don't have an orientation. That is what I so clearly found out. Also with those people, it's very interesting with those people who have this severe diagnosis of schizophrenia and whatever, how rapidly it changes when they have the intention and the I comes in. How rapidly it can change for them and give them, oh, I didn't know that I do have an I. When they did not mention it in the sentence. For example, I had an example the 2 days before with a lady who was diagnosed as schizophrenic. A long sentence of all the things you want to do clear, but no I in it. And finally, at the end, when we brought in the I, she rapidly, something changed. So this is, this gives orientation. Identity and I gives orientation. This is the reason why I call what I'm doing identity therapy. What I mean by I'm doing is, for me, it's identity therapy, because that is what we need. That is what we urgently need for ourselves. And what's good for ourselves then is also good for others. It's also something very important to mention. No? It's not selfishness. It's not egoistic, or it's really the only way how to, way to create a peaceful world.
Yes, and that's what we are learn to think that we are selfish and wrong, and that I think is a big hindrance for many people to come to this to love ourselves. That's very wrong. That's what I always heard at least.
What I said before, there's a culture of self-denial. You should not show your feelings. You should obey the rules. You should not look at yourself. There's a culture, a whole culture, and if we do this work, we can support the shift in the culture. We have a different consciousness than what is good for us and for others. Okay, so how to find out of being a perpetrator, if somebody wants it, and mostly it comes when you have acknowledged of being made a victim. This is the starting point. If you acknowledge this, then you can go to the next step and admit, okay, I'm also a perpetrator. That means then you can acknowledge your deeds and your personal responsibility. Then you can also feel your own fears and shame. And you acknowledge your personal guilt. If there's a personal guilt, and then you can acknowledge that. And you can then empathize with the victims. And you can offer maybe compensation for the damages you have done. And you don't do more atonement. Yeah? It's a clear way out. If somebody was a perpetrator, is a perpetrator, there's also a clear way out. Yeah? It takes time. It's not so easy, but it's clear. Clear how to do it. Okay. Any other ideas you have how to deal with perpetration and if somebody is a perpetrator?
What do you mean with offer compensation? That sounds very tempting and easy. Like I offer you a compensation and then I'm free from what I've done, or what does it mean?
No, that does not mean it's free, but it does make, I acknowledge I have done a harm to somebody, and maybe if I can offer this person some support, then it's okay. Why not? Why not? If you destroy the house of another person, it's okay, then I have to pay for it, or I have to do something that you have a new house. Why not? But this connects you again. Yeah? This is that to reconnect, because as a perpetrator I have lost the connection. I have lost the connection with my feelings, and so I have lost connection with my fellow peoples. And how can I reconnect in a good way?
I get that, but the compensation sounds like an easy way out.
No, I do not mean that. No, it's not the easy way out. It's one of the points you can do. Yeah. If you realize that you have done harm to others, and you can offer it. It depends if the other person wants something from you or accepts something from you. But it brings you again in a good relation. That is important.
But if you don't accept your shame and fears, you reconnect and you're in danger of doing something else again.
Yeah, shame. If you reconnect with your shame, then this is something that connects you again with communities. If you accept your shame and say, okay, what I've done is very shameful that I did it, but then the others see it and acknowledge it, and then you're again a member of communities. Yeah? If you admit your shame, that's a normal reaction to something that you have done. So my conclusions of all of this is, when we look at war, violence, and all this awful destructiveness, for a better life and living together, it's not about power, money, sex, or family. It's about our inner world. We should immediately stop to traumatize each other's. If we want to stop war and all those things, we have to look at ourselves, not in the outside. Who is the enemy? Who is guilty? Are the Russians more guilty than the Americans? Are the Americans more guilty than... It doesn't help. It doesn't lead to anything. Yeah? Every power sometimes is overpowered by another power. Yeah? It's all illusion. It's all illusion. So to get this control over the world of the whole humanity, it's a complete illusion. Please.
Maybe we have lost the belief in love. I think that love is very much help to cure also this problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the first thing is that you start to love yourself before you start to love others. It's so important that you clearly love yourself. If you do not love yourself and instead say, I love others, it's not true. It cannot be true. And this is important too.
Yes, that sounds like a demand. isn't very helpful.
What?
You should love yourself.
Yeah, you're right. It's the man. Now, be curious. Be curious to see yourself, who you are, what your capacities are. Just be curious who you really are. That if you see all your life you have done what others said to you and wanted to rescue others, and maybe be curious who you really are, and start with that, and see what a beautiful person you are, what a interesting person you are. Okay?
I think this is the bottom
Yeah.
of the problem.
That's the bottom of the problem, that in the end we hate ourselves, or we are trained to hate ourselves.
We have been criticized and fed with that.
Mm-hmm.
And very easily a comment can be looked upon as something is wrong with me,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe we should accept that there are lots of things wrong with us,
Mm-hmm.
and not feel bad about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is so basic, that we come to the point where it's like, oh, I'm here in the world, and it's not wrong that I'm here. It's nothing wrong with me. What I have experienced, what I've done with this experience, maybe this is wrong, but it's nothing wrong with me.
But I could add one more thing, and this is very much a German trauma. After the two world wars
Uh-huh.
and the Nazi regime, I think I feel I meet Germans abroad who are traumatized and never get over it. And I think they take the guilt with them. Somehow they have inherited it.
Some of them have. Not all. Or not necessarily all. But a lot of people, of course, after the World War, they were invited to be included in the Western community by saying we were the guilty ones, and now starting to support the next perpetrator, for example, Israel, and give them weapons. And this was how this guilt was acted out then. It's not a good way of feeling guilty. It's not a true way of feeling accepting what they have done. Many people have done. It's okay. Yeah, if after the Second World, a lot of people would have looked at themselves and said, "What have you done? It was not okay." But instead, this was an attitude of guilt. It was not real connected with feelings. It was just a concept.
Yes, but also that they were judged because they were Germans.
Mm-hmm.
And still, today, I see people who have this nervous problem, nerve problem of, and I would relate it to history.
Yeah, but I think the basic problem is that you, instead of having your identity, you identify. Instead of seeing what have I done, what is mine, what's not mine, and I was born after the war. I do not have to do anything with the war personally. But if you identify, I'm a German, and see this more important than who you really are, yourself are, then you get the problem. It's also important.
I also think we have to liberate ourselves from the wrongdoings of our family.
Yes.
And we have to undo the wrong of our ancestors.
Yeah, I would say it like this. Identification is different from identity. If you go to find out who you are, what's your identity are, it's different from identify with your parents, your grandparents, your ancestors. And to get this clearer, how much you have sucked it in, maybe with the mother's milk, but if you grow up, you can make the step to say, okay, I do not need to identify with that, what my parents have done. I am my own person. Okay, so, and yeah, this last sentence is, and we should not force ourselves mutually to give up our own I. That is a cultural thing, yeah. That we do not force. I do not force you, and you do not force me to give up my I and my identity.
I just have a question. Since you were mentioning that we are being trained to hate ourselves, so it kind of, I wonder if you could say a few words on the dynamics of the janteloven that we sort of suffer from here in Norway.
The what?
The janteloven.
What is it?
The like.
You should not think
Yeah.
too highly of yourself. Don't believe you are anything.
Yeah.
Can you say it? What is?
Define.
The janteloven is that you should not think you are anything, and
Do not think too highly of yourself.
don't think too highly about yourself. It
What
is
do?
Don't think too highly about yourself.
Uh-huh.
We are better than you are.
Pardon?
We are better than you are.
Ah, okay.
Well, it's the same thing.
Okay, yeah. So it is like a law to get people to feel down,
Uh-huh.
reduced.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's typical for Norwegian culture. It's like something
Yeah.
that has been typical for Scandinavia.
Uh-huh.
And it is to fit into the culture.
Uh-huh.
This is how we should behave.
Uh-huh.
Reduce
Reduce
ourselves.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Like the dynamics of it, like why did it emerge in a
Yeah.
way?
Why
Uh-huh.
did it- why did- yeah. And as far as I know, Gro Harlem Brundtland, she put this law away in 1994 when we had the Olympics. She said it's typical Norwegian to be good.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not an expert of Scandinavian countries, so I don't know where the roots are. The roots maybe are in religion. That's a religious thing also, that you have to be humble and not to go step to challenge God. Yeah, to punish you, and so I think it's a lot of roots of those coming from religious thinkings. Yeah? To be submissive, stay more in victim attitudes. Yeah? So, yeah. But what clearly it is, I don't know.
I think it came with Christianity. It was not like this before.
Uh-huh. Could be. Okay.
Yeah, the Vikings were not like that.
No. They were only based on this law is you should not think that you are better than us.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So, what means a good life? A good life beyond the victim-perpetrator-splitting? How can it be? Yeah, find a true and stable contact with yourself. Come into contact with your own body and your own feelings. It's also important to include the body in the whole process, because trauma also results in having no good contact with your body. The body is separated. The body is an object. The body is not really felt, and so it's trauma work is also body work. It's very important, and body work and working with feelings. So that you can feel compassion and empathy with yourself. And and then we are able to develop our capacities for healthy relationships. Yeah. I started the work years ago when I myself realized I'm not capable to have good relationships. I do not know how to do it. Nobody learned me. I myself couldn't learn it. And this was something that woke me up. Oh, I have relationships. I do not know how to make good relationships. Now I know why it's so difficult. Because if you're split, if you have so many inner parts, how can you have a good relationship? Yeah. And so, I hope meanwhile I have some ideas about that, what a good relationship is. And so I think good life means, whenever possible, to leave bonding systems that are caught up in this victim and perpetrator dynamics that you can't change. If you realize in this system you can't do anything to change the system, leave it. Leave it as soon as possible. Create your own space, create your own living space, create your own systems where you want to, and people that you want to be together. And don't let you pull in those systems again, because those systems you leave, they want to pull you again in. They try hard to do that. And as long as you want to have this, and have this idea to be loved, to be seen by the system, of course you can be easily pulled in. And so try to live constructive relationships and find and establish win-win instead of win-lose situation in the political, economical and personal field. Yeah? That whenever what you're doing, on the personal level, economical level, political level, create win-win situations. Yeah? Where you have something from it and the other person the same. Yeah? Whenever you want to compete, whenever you want to be the winner, you lose. That's a very, very clear insight I got from it, and I try to do as best as possible with that. Okay, it all starts with ourselves, that we jump over the split, and then that is, for me, as a conclusion, the only way to make this world a better and safer place. Thank you.